Guys, Matt Lemke here with Your Gamer Goggles, and we have a special episode of Roleplay Ramblings. I'm with Jason Hardy from Canada's Game Labs, and he's the game editor slash line editor for the RPG Shadowrun. And we're going to talk today about how to apply social tension to your game, and we're going to use some real world things that have happened in the recent past. So we're not really talking about any social issues, but we're going to talk about how you can maybe apply them to your game world and give it a little bit more flavor. Because sometimes our game worlds can be a little bland, and when you throw something like this in, you don't really know how your players are going to react, and it can be fun watching them sort out what their character thinks. So, anyway, Jason, I guess we'll start by recently we had this whole bathroom thing blow up in our society, or kind of, cause some tension. And it got me to thinking that a lot of game worlds are just like there. They have this flat line of social norms. And, game worlds are usually pretty big. And one thing that sometimes seems to lack is different aspects of culture. Mm-hmm. So the reason why I want to talk to you about it, too, is I remember playing, and maybe it's just because I was, 19, I remember playing Shadowrun 1, the first edition, and it seemed to me like the tone between liking a dwarf and liking a troll, it seemed like racism was a little bit heavier. And I don't mean heavy like, it was hateful, but it was like there was this tone of tension. And I think part of that is because it was so close to like the 1960s and 70s. Yeah. It was a reflection of our society. Things were different when I was in school, in high school and stuff. That there was a heavier tone. It's not the same now. My kids are in high school, and I see it's just not the same. So let's just start by saying how would you recommend somebody should apply something like that to their game world without going too far or ruining the experience?
Yeah, I think that's part of the trick is figuring out where to stop, because gaming ideally should be welcoming to whoever's playing. And so if you're doing something at the table and you're trying to exploit a social condition and reflect that in the game, and that ends up making people not comfortable at the table and not feel like they're having fun, then, maybe it's time to shift over to some policy debate somewhere rather than playing a game.
That brings up a valid point. If you drop something like that on the table and you see that a player is immediately uncomfortable with it, maybe you should change it.
Yeah, or at least have communication with the players. So talk to them and see what they're comfortable with, what levels of discussion they'll want to have. But I think there's a lot that can be done in reflecting society, and that's one of the things we've thought a lot with Shadowrun. Is Shadowrun started in the late 80s, and a lot of what it was at first reflected views of society at the time. Just from the Matrix being something you had to plug into, and from cyber limbs being viewed as a little sketchy, and technology being having a dehumanizing effect, especially any early cyberpunk has a, at best, ambivalent relationship with technology. But then when you move forward a quarter of a century, we're much more comfortable with technology. If I think about the computer I had and was using when Shadowrun first came out, I have a computer way more powerful than that in my pocket. More memory and more processing power could do a whole lot more. And I have one in my pocket, and then I also have another one that I carry around other times, and I have one at home, and we're just, technology is everywhere, so you can't stay stuck in what Shadowrun was doing. If we kept the same attitudes towards technology that it had in the beginning, we'd get dated really quickly. And Cyberpunk has had some problems with that.
Excellent point. It really is, because you have to grow.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to be time-stamped.
So I think part of the trick for Shadowrun is focusing less on the cyber part of the punk name and more on the punk. Because really, when you look at early cyberpunk and why it was worried about technology, it wasn't because there's anything inherently evil about technology. it was because technology can be used as a tool to tamp down individual expression, and that individuals and that DIY aesthetic that's part of the core part of any punk has to, you know, fight against the dehumanizing aspects of what people in power might do. And that's still going on. So technology might have changed, but the struggle of individuals against authoritarianism keeps happening.
Correct. Yeah.
And the fight to still have an individual identity and figure out who you are as a person and worry that some of yourself might get swallowed up keeps going on. And so if we focus on that, that can stay relevant. And there's a lot of concerns in society about the individual as part of a larger whole that are very relevant.
Which, actually, you took this really big problem and now we're going to shrink it down. You can take that idea or those ideas of the problems within society and attempt to get each of your players to apply it to their character.
Yep.
And I think that's really where he's going with it. If you focus on the punk and what it means to each individual, you create character tension within your party, or your hopefully just your party and not your players. That's the
Sometimes
goal.
crosses over, but yeah, that's why
sometimes-
you want to make it fun.
Yeah, sometimes it's a fine line. So you just have to be sensitive to those things. And that's really what I wanted to get to, was that root of how to get it to making, because it is a community. So you have to take your community, which in a role-playing can be anywhere from 4 to sometimes 12 players is a large group, but it's doable. And make the experience unique for each player, so that at the same time each player is developing their character to make it a full experience for them. And well, one troll in Shadowrun, he might not care about transgender bathrooms, or then you've got an orc that does care for whatever reason, and it's not about creating the tension or the war within the society, but it's about the reflection of what they believe their characters would do and then how they would react with each other.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, realistically, the transgender bathrooms in role-playing would be quite silly to create a problem, but it might be an interesting side role play for 5 or 10 minutes.
Right. Well, and again, it's looking at, as you were saying, looking at some of the larger issues behind it.
Right.
Because there's other fears and worries and concerns behind the whole transgender bathroom issue. And, a lot of it is people's fear of someone who's different than them. And then on the other side, it's people saying, I need to be able to take care of basic bodily functions without having to worry about my safety. And so it's not just about who gets to walk in this particular room. There are larger concerns that people have that are coming out in
Right.
that. I wrote a book for Shadowrun a few years ago called Hell on Water. And what that ended up being about was just looking at a bunch of different Shadowrunners and why they do what they do. So it was a team of Shadowrunners in Lagos, Nigeria, who end up in a very difficult situation, basically where it's terrible conditions in the city and they need to try to get across town. And they face every obstacle I could throw at them. And as they keep throwing these obstacles, it keeps looking at what did you have to do and what compromises did you have to make to get to where you are, and how many more compromises are you willing to make to what you think is important in order to survive, in order to get paid. There is one of the characters who is very interested in standing up for women in her society, because she lives in a society where they are often devalued. But she then finds herself in conflict with another organization who does that same thing. And she finds herself being told by them, you're doing this wrong. And so, what does she do then? Her sympathies are automatically to say, okay, I want to be on your side. You're the people I like. But she also has to get her job done. She also has to
And that
earn a living. So how does she make those compromises and still feel that she is committed to what she wants to be committed? And I think that's fun to explore.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly, and I believe that's a key point to role-playing. I'm not a fan of playing a role per se. I probably was 30 years ago. Now I'm much more into developing character, and I think things like this help do that. But it's like so many game worlds, I think, kind of leave different cultures and societies. They're too similar. Uh, so things like adding the tension in that we were talking about help players do that, and that is a perfect example because now you have a character that's not only in conflict with herself, she's in possible conflict with the whole party,
Right.
and then that's great with the play.
Yeah, and if you can have a role player who's capable of pulling that off and making it interesting to have that distinction and figure out how they're going to maneuver all that can make for a lot of great sessions.
It's exactly a lot of great
Yeah,
sessions.
because it can keep the ramifications of that can keep spilling out over time.
That's so true. Wow. Yep. But that's pretty much perfect. What else do you think? What other ways? I mean, we could go on forever and talk about it. Basically, it's about creating tension.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's creating tension and it's not being too clumsy about it. I mean, if I was trying to run a game with people, and let's say, I have my own political or social beliefs. If I designed a session because I wanted my players to all come out of that realizing that they needed to agree with me on this political issue,
That would be so bad.
that would be horrible. So I'm not, you're not using issues as a chance to bludgeon your players or to teach them a very important lesson. You have to respect their intelligence, you have to respect their humanity, and you have to remember that this is a story that you're all making together. And so if they have a chance to contribute, and your focus was on characters. If their characters are making interesting decisions, then you have a good story. If the characters are feeling like they're just having a plot paraded in front of them that they have to react to in a prescribed way so that you can make your point, then that's not any good at
Yeah,
all.
I mean, that is a style of GMing, and I think a long time ago I moved away from that. And I leave it a lot more open-ended now. And I think that's one of the things that actually brought me to doing a show like this, was the open-endedness. It makes a lot of headaches for me as a GM. It really does.
Yeah, you do have to scramble a lot of the time.
Yeah, or you have to have 22 different plot points planned out.
Right.
Because you don't
know where they're going.
You don't know where they're going, exactly. But by giving that kind of freedom to the characters or the players, I think they develop better characters.
Yeah, absolutely. I was as a GM much more in the past trying to get players to follow a line, and and it wasn't political, but it was the plot's supposed to go this way.
Right.
But then I kept playing with other game masters who figured things out on the fly and who were able to make adaptations or adaptations. And when we made choices or tried to explore some way, they found a way to make our choices matter. And, just as a simple comparison, I saw that when I played their games, I was having so much fun and I felt like I could do things and it would be cool. And when people were playing my games, sometimes they'd have fun, but other times they'd hit a wall and get frustrated because everything they were choosing to do would be a dead end and they couldn't figure out the right plot line that I wanted them to follow. So that was a good wake-up call to me that I needed to change, and I needed to let them shape the story more, and that I needed to listen to their choices.
Yeah, railroading isn't necessarily the best.
No, it's not.
I mean, at times, there are good ways to railroad, and then there are bad ways to railroad.
I mean, you can have a reveal that you want, because there's times that you have,
Yeah.
the big secret that you want to come out. And you can still do that. It's just a way of taking a different route to that end.
Yeah,
You can have them make choices that take the story in different directions, but you still have a surprise waiting for
Yeah,
you.
it's kind of like a tree. The trunk comes up and the branches go out, but the top is still here no matter how you get there.
Right.
Wow. But yeah, so there basically you drop it. Don't be a klutz or don't be a bully with it. Don't use it to justify your own means. Use it to help them develop character. If it's something that is particularly wow, I totally lost my word. Stressful or causes a lot of tension. in society, maybe you should talk to them about it before introducing it to your game. Maybe if one person is particularly loud about it, talk to them about it first to see how they might want their character to react to it. And if you have faith in them, then go forward with it. But again, using reflections of society to better your game world is, I would say, it's actually pretty easy to do.
Yeah, it's in your head. I mean,
Yeah, well, and it's
society-
fresh.
Yeah, you're seeing it. It's something that's in all of our thoughts, and so it gives you a chance to take some of those thoughts and channel them out and see what happens.
And again, it all comes down, if you're not a GM that, or your players aren't players that play the character and they play the role, as opposed to the character, this might not be something for you either. So, anything else you want to add?
No, I think you covered it. I just, to back up what you just said, that yeah, it's how the characters play, and you have to figure out what's comfortable for your group.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for watching. This is actually, I think this is probably my favorite session of Roleplay Rambling so far. Thank you, Jason. It has been
thank you.
a blast and a really good talk, and I look forward to more. Bye, guys.
See ya.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
That was good. I like that.